What's good, kings and queens? I hope everyone is doing alright. This week's video is on every single Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year from the year 2000 all the way to present day. Since there's a lot to cover here, I will briefly explain the winners' accomplishments and who were in contention for the #1 spot. With that being said, let's start the video. Undisputedly, Trinidad had one of the best performances for the 2000 calendar year. After Tito's big win to end off 1999 against Oscar De La Hoya, he will move up to junior middleweight and fight the incredibly talented gold medalist David Reed for the WBA title. Both guys will taste the canvas, however, Trinidad will pull through and drop Reed 4 times in the fight to win by a hard-fought unanimous decision. Then make his first defense against EBU regional champion Mamadou Thiam, stopping him in the third round. Then, to end the year off, Trinidad will unify against the undefeated IBF champion Fernando Vargas. One of the best fights of the year. Back and forth action, Trinidad will come up victorious, stopping Vargas late in the fight to become the unified champion in 2 different weight classes.
He's a veteran, and that'll do it. The third right hand, the third knockdown.
In 2001, it was pretty much ultimately decided between the winner of Don King's middleweight tournament. Tito would move up to his 3rd weight class in middleweight and absolutely wash William Joppy in 5 rounds. The IBF champion Bernard Hopkins will unify against WBC champion Keith Holmes. He will win by a wide unanimous decision. Winner takes all in the finals and becomes the undisputed champion. A win here would put both guys in place of greatness. The 2-1 underdog Hopkins would shock many, completely dismantling Tito, then to stop him in the 12th round to become the undisputed middleweight champion. Hopkins, who had a similar come up in the shadows like Marvin Hagler, would finally have his day, getting the recognition he was seeking for all these years. Shane Mosley came in 2002 as the baddest man in boxing. Combination of speed, power, and showing a lot of resemblance of the great Sugar Ray Robinson with his style. Unfortunately, when Mosley had beaten Oscar, there was really no one else left at welterweight, as the rest of the talent had moved up to junior middle. Not the best look for the new pound-for-pound star.
A skeptic or a cynic, and I am one or both of those right here, would say, okay, you beat a C-rated fighter. So what? Well, I mean, you're trying to get wider public acceptance. You fight a guy nobody ever heard of. He's unknown, he's unranked, and you knocked him out. Big deal.
However, he will finally have a top-shelf opponent at welterweight since the Oscar De La Hoya fight. That will be against Olympic silver medalist Vernon Forrest. Vernon, who possessed the skills, was rather untested at this level of the sport. He would pick up Trinidad's vacant IBF title, 18-4 Raul Frank, in the rematch. Their first fight was for the vacant title, which was ruled a no contest after accidental butts. Vernon would win, but the title will quickly go vacant. However, Forrest had high rank, so this fight would be for the ring title. Vernon would have Mosley's number and just dominate him all throughout the fight, with Mosley not having an answer to Vernon's offense. Forrest will win by wide unanimous decision to become the new welterweight champion. There will be an immediate rematch. Mosley would do better, however, Forrest just had his number, and Vernon was able to win again comfortably on the scorecards. These 2 back-to-back wins against the pound-for-pound king will earn him the Fighter of the Year. 2003 was a rather competitive year. You had Manny Pacquiao move up to featherweight and defeat Marco Antonio Barrera, becoming a superstar and national treasure overnight. Then Roy Jones Jr. moving up to heavyweight and defeating John Ruiz. Then losing all that weight to defend his belts at light heavyweight against Antonio Tarver to pull off a majority decision win. However, this will be the year of lights out. After 5 years campaigning at cruiserweight, James Toney gets his shot to fight IBF champion Vasyl Lomachenko. HBO had Toney down. Toney, under the assumption of being down, would deliver big, knocking Giraffe down in the final seconds. The judges on the other end killed the high tension of what was thought to be a narrow win or a draw on the scorecards by giving him a lopsided wide decision. Toney in his next fight would move up to heavyweight and face 3-time undisputed and 4-time heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield. Toney would put up a show and stop Holyfield in the 9th round. Keep in mind, Holyfield was an 8-5 favorite to win the fight. With that, Toney became the Fighter of the Year. This is my favorite winner. You will never get a wild card like this for a very long time in boxing. Maybe if Julius Ndongo defeated Crawford for the undisputed title, or Tony Bellew defeated Hay twice and Usyk in the same year for undisputed. But you see these improbable what-if scenarios.
I'd like to see that.
Glen Johnson is that guy who just happened to pull it off. Johnson was at journeyman status very early in his career. Bernard Hopkins will give Johnson his first loss, and this would probably be the worst beating in his career, and offensively, the most Hopkins ever threw on a guy. Johnson would lose his next 2 fights, going 0-3. After a couple wins, he would then go on a 4-fight losing streak. After 2 big wins, he would then have a streak of bad luck. He would get 1 win, 2 losses, and 2 draws. That 1 win was good enough because that was for the IBF USBA title. His draw would be against IBF champion Clinton Woods at the end of 03. At the start of 04, there was an immediate rematch. Johnson will defeat Woods for the IBF title, then come in as a 6-1 underdog against Roy Jones Jr., knock Roy out in the 9th round. Then the fighter of the year is decided between Antonio Tarver and Glen Johnson, who are the clear best of the division given the crazy circumstances. Both fighters vacated their belts to make this fight happen. Johnson vacated his belt, however Tarver was stripped of the WBC title. That wouldn't matter as this will be fought for the ring and vacant IBO title. You had both guys fighting for that title of champion and fighter of the year. Glen Johnson would pull through and win by a narrow split decision and bring in both titles, making it one of the most improbable nominees of the entire 2000s.
He is the road warrior, Glen Johnson.
In 2005, Hatton will earn his shot at the Costa Zoo sweepstakes for the junior welterweight title. The 15-8 betting underdog, Hatton, who despite having a 38-0 record was untested at this level of the sport and relatively unknown to US audiences. Zoo, on the other hand, was a household name in the States and asserted his dominance as the best fighter in the weight class, with many in line wanting to face him. Hatton would defy the odds and bewilder Zoo with his constant pressure and bulldog style, matched with incredibly fast footwork that was relatively unique and unseen in the weight class. Zoo had no answer. Beat and exhausted, Zoo would retire from his stool in between the 11th and 12th round, making Hatton the IBF and lineal champ of the weight class. Hatton in his next fight at the end of 2005 will unify for the WBA title. He would knock out WBA champ in the 9th round. As the higher weight classes were in reconstruction, super featherweight was becoming the most exciting weight class in America and one of the most watched internationally. Pacquiao, after his loss against Morales in 05, will regroup and revamp his style from just having a one-dimensional jab in the left hand to now having multiple weapons in his arsenal. Pacquiao would defeat Morales in a highly contested 10 rounds to earn the TKO victory, becoming astronomically famous in the Philippines. He would then have a homecoming fight in the Philippines against former champion Oscar Larios, defeating him by a wide unanimous decision. Then to end the year off, Manny will have his 3rd fight against Morales, ending their rivalry by stopping him in the 3rd round and solidifying his position as the fight of the year. The one fighter that may have posed a threat to winning the fight of the year of 2006 was Floyd Mayweather, but due to the controversy in the Zab Judah fight and the not so popular fight with Carlos Baldomir, it was an easy choice choosing Pacquiao as the fighter of the year. In 2007, it was pretty cut and clear. Floyd will get his shot at superstardom in a mega record-breaking fight for the ages against Oscar De La Hoya. Floyd would defeat Oscar by split decision to become the WBC junior middleweight champion. Since Floyd was a free agent from Bob Arum prior to his fight with Oscar, he was able to get the fight he always wanted, but couldn't because he could not get the guaranteed money he wanted under Bob Arum, and that was against the junior welterweight champion Ricky Hatton. Floyd will stop Hatton in the 10th round to end the year off on a huge note with 2 big pay-per-view sellout fights. With Floyd announcing his retirement to hold out from an Oscar rematch, Pacquiao will rise up again to take the nominee coming into 2008, as now he is a WBC mandatory to face Juan Manuel Marquez. Manny will start the year off defeating Marquez in the unification for the WBC ring and lineal titles. He would then have the opportunity to move up to lightweight and defeat WBC champion David Diaz. Due to Floyd retiring and Golden Boy scrambling to have a fight big enough to somewhat fill in the shoes years as a replacement. One of the heads of Golden Boy, Eric Gomez, proposed a Pacquiao fight. By pure luck, an agreement was made by Pacquiao's team.
You should fight Pacquiao. Oscar laughed. He's too little. He's too little, that guy.
Pacquiao getting an all-time high payday at the time of $11 million. Manny, the 2-1 betting underdog, would shock all by pulverizing De La Hoya for 8 rounds till De La Hoya retired from his stool. 3 huge fights in 1 year, solidifying Manny's Fight of the Year status. Manny will start the year hot by making his position from 140 to 147 more legitimate by facing the lineal and ring champion Ricky Hatton. Hatton turned his career around after his loss to Floyd by hiring Floyd Sr. as a trainer. Hatton would demolish IBF champion Paulie Malignaggi, stopping him for the first time and giving him his first loss since he fought Miguel Cotto. Winner will be in line for Fight of the Year. However, both Freddie Roach and Mayweather Sr. were in line as Trainer of the Year as well. Manny would demolish Hatton in 2 rounds to become the lineal and ring champion. Over the spring, Miguel Cotto will regain the welterweight title against Michael Jennings. Then a huge defense against feared welterweight Joshua Clottey. Cotto was able to dig deep late after stacking up an early lead and squeak through with a split decision win over the incredibly huge Clottey. I say huge because Clottey can rehydrate well over 160 despite being a welterweight. In his fight with Corrales, he was weighing 170 on fight day. If there was not a rehydration clause, then Cotto was in for a long night. Pacquiao was in attendance for this fight as a potential opponent. Cotto began training camp 35 days before the fight became official, as this fight was at a catch weight of 145. So I'm guessing with Cotto having a pre-camp before actually signing a contract, depending on how that 35 days went, depend on if Cotto was actually going to sign the contract for a 145-pound catch weight. During the fight, Pacquiao will get eaten up by Cotto's jab early on, literally knocking his head back. Manny would make adjustments and find a way to counter over Cotto's jab, resulting in the first knockdown of the fight. This would be a highly contested first half till Cotto would ultimately tire out from fighting at an extreme pace. Manny would stop Cotto late in round 12 to become the WBO champion. Martinez will come on the scene after demolishing Alex Bunema, then get robbed by Kermit Cintron. However, Martinez will get a shot to face Paul Williams to end the year off as a last-minute replacement due to the failure of Williams versus Pavlik. This will be an amazing fight with both guys touching the canvas. Williams would scrape by, beating Martinez by a close majority decision. However, one judge had it grossly wide. Judge Pierre Benoist scored at 119-110, when the other two scored at 113-115 and 114-114. 2 very suspicious cards in a row for Martinez. To start the 2010 year off, Martinez would earn a shot to fight WBC ring and lineal middleweight champion Kelly Pavlik. Pavlik came in on fight day a massive 178 pounds. Martinez would easily stack up an early lead. However, he would completely fall asleep and Pavlik will win rounds 5 and 6, drop Martinez in 7, and win round 8. This put Pavlik ahead in the scorecards coming into the 9th. Martinez would cut Pavlik, and as Martinez's offense fell asleep earlier, it had awakened up in the 9th, while Pavlik's died down. Martinez will finish the fight strong to become the middleweight champion. To end the year off, he would have his rematch against Paul Williams. If you were in boxing around this time, you knew Paul's reputation. He was one of the boogeymen of the weight class from 147 to 154 pounds. Martinez, now a full-fledged middleweight in this fight, would do the most shocking thing to start the decade off, which was knocking Paul Williams out cold in the 2nd round. This would automatically make Martinez the nominee for Fight of the Year and also the Knockout of the Year. Andre Ward, who is not the favorite to win the tournament, would go on undefeated in 2011 to defeat Arthur Abraham, then Carl Froch in the finals to become the unified super middleweight champion to end the year off. The runner-ups for the 2011 year, there's not really that much to choose from. You had Vladimir Klitschko, you could throw Floyd Mayweather in there. Manny Pacquiao for 2011, it was a bit of a down year. 2012 was an incredibly competitive year. Marquez in December would just barely steal the Fight of the Year nominee over his huge knockout win against Manny Pacquiao. Seeing Manny get knocked down legitimately for the first time since his flyweight to bantamweight days was insane, but seeing Marquez knock Manny out in such a devastating fashion just as Manny was going to end the round big shook the entire world. This fight was a combination of the first and second, but better. Most slept on it and was not attracted when it was announced. Still, whoever tuned in was in for the biggest treat, as this was one of the most exciting fights of the decade. This fight will be named Fight of the Year. Marquez will be awarded both Knockout of the Year and Fighter of the Year. Naoya Inoue was on victory road as the winner for Fighter of the Year before that knockout happened. He had a massive 2012 year, moving up to super bantamweight to become champion, then to unify against Jeffrey Matabula for the IBF title, then unify against long-reigning champ Toshiaki Nishioka for the ring and lineal title, then end the year off knocking out and retiring Jorge Arce. He will be named Boxing Writer Association Fighter of the Year, as they did not unanimously see that Marquez's win over Pacquiao was enough compared to Donaire's 4-fight year. After a quick start in the regional circuit, things will come crashing down on Stevenson after losing to Darnell Boone by KO in the second round in his US debut in 2010. Stevenson would bounce back in 2011 and rake in 7 fights. Big win against Derek Edwards for the NABF, then Aaron Pryor Jr. for the WBO NABO super middleweight title, IBF Intercontinental against Jesus Gonzalez, WBC silver against Nola Alcoba, and an IBF title elimination match against Donovan George. He will get revenge and beat Darnell Boone in the rematch. Coming into 2013, Stevenson was ranked number 1 by the IBF. However, Stevenson moved up and was given the opportunity to face Chad Dawson, mostly because Dawson, despite his skills, he was not a sell in the States, and Canada had some hardcore boxing fans that will guarantee a return investment in gate. The Stevenson fight seemed to be the best option monetarily by the network and promotion as his first fight back after his defeat against Andre Ward, because any big fight that is waiting to be developed in the 2013 year, Dawson would have to wait. Stevenson on his light heavyweight debut on this stage and HBO debut would knock Dawson out in the first round to pick up the WBC, lineal, and ring titles.
And Chad Dawson is very badly hurt by what was a sensational shot. He has wobbly legs as he backs up to the rope, and the referee's going to stop it. Michael Griffin stops it in the first round. Chad Dawson is violently upset by the stoppage. Adonis Stevenson is the light heavyweight champion of the world.
With the talent like this, the hardcore Canadian fight fans, and the fact that Adonis, outside of Banks, is the last of the Kronk Gym tutelage that still fights under Kronk, that was being trained by Stewart, that's active in boxing. HBO now has a story to push to generate a new renaissance in the weight class. Stevenson 3 months later will be up against recently dethroned IBF champion Travares Cloud, doing something Hopkins couldn't do, getting the TKO victory. 3 fights in a 6-month span where Stevenson had received little to any damage in. He will be scheduled to make his 4th fight of the year against WBC mandatory Tony Bellew, with Kovalev on the undercard promoting this as a setup fight to a unification. Stevenson will blow out Toney in 6 rounds to successfully defend his title to end the year off. By far, Stevenson had the most impressive year, being awarded the title Fighter of the Year.
On paper, Stevenson, because this year, in this calendar year, he avenged his only loss of his career by knockout. He won the lineal title by one-punch first-round knockout. He beat up by showing a new part of his game and outboxing the once heir apparent, stopping him. And then he took on a sanctioning body mandatory and stopped him. He barely lost a round.
Like Stevenson, in 2010, Sergey will be tricked by Darnell Boone in that very same year. Kovalev will win by a controversial split decision. There are numerous stories that what happened during that fight definitely exists of this fight. However, it's yet to come out public. Fellow longtime subscriber and friend Evan Holyfield confirmed to me a while ago this tape indeed exists. Kovalev would bounce back and make a lot of improvements, and by the time he made his real TV debut against Darnell Boone in the rematch, he was a complete package, demolishing Boone in the second round. 3 third-round TKOs later, Kovalev go on to defeat Nathan Cleverly in the 4th round for the WBO title to end the 2013 year off against Ismail Salas, stopping him in the second round. 2014 will be the year for Kovalev, getting the KO victory over the undefeated Cedric Agnew, a bit nervous scare against Blake Capriello in the Hopkins fight setup, then the big unification against Bernard Hopkins for the IBF and WBA titles. The 2014 year was a very competitive year. In lightweight, you had Terence Crawford go to England and beat top 3 ranked WBO champion Ricky Burns, then having a coming out performance that gained him mainstream attention against the undefeated former champ Yuriorkis Gamboa. Then to end the year off, Crawford would fight the #1 ranked fighter Ray Beltran. Beltran had fought Ricky Burns prior to Crawford, and it was a split decision draw which was billed as a robbery. Crawford would completely outclass Beltran to become the ring champion at lightweight. Also in 2014, a now familiar face in the mainstream, Naoya Inoue will become the WBC light flyweight champion. He will make one defense before moving up from light fly, skipping flyweight altogether to super flyweight to fight the #1 ranked fighter in the weight class, Argentine great WBO champion Omar Narvaez. Omar picked up the flyweight title, successfully defending it 9 times before moving up to superfly, where he defended it 11 times leading up to the Inoue fight. 20 successful title defenses coming in. In between that, he was pretty much a fill-in against WBO and WBC champion Nonito Donaire. If he didn't fight Donaire for his career high payday, he would be 43-0 coming into the Inoue fight. The 7-0 Inoue would knock Narvaez out in 2 rounds to become a 2-division champion. Lastly, you had Roman Gonzalez. Roman would move up to his 3rd weight class of flyweight and defeat the WBC ring and lineal champion Akira Yagashi to go 40-0. In one of the biggest heavyweight fights in the first half of the 2010s, thanks to Tyson Fury's personality, social media really getting everything out there, he would end up doing the impossible and earn a decision upset victory over Vladimir Klitschko for the WBA, IBF, WBO, ring, and lineal titles in Germany, ending Klitschko's historic reign and his final conquest to win his brother's WBC title to become undisputed. The one standout competing for that position and ultimately lost in the run for Fighter of the Year was Gennady Golovkin. Gennady would start the year off with a big win against Martin Murray, 13th successful defense against William Moreau, and to end the year off unifying against IBF champion David Lemieux, completely outclassing him, then to get the stoppage in round 8. The super bantamweight class was locked up a great period of time because no one wanted to fight Guillermo Rigondeaux, who had the WBO, ring, and WBA super titles. Coming into 2016, the fight to be made was between #2 ranked Carl Frampton, the IBF champion, and #1 ranked WBA champion Scott Quigg. 2 undefeated stars, and it will be the biggest fight in the weight class's history in the UK, especially attendance-wise. However, there's a problem. This fight can't be a unification. Quigg's WBA title is not a real title. When there's a super champion, a regular champion is prohibited from unifying. He can only make defenses and unify against a super champion, which is Guillermo Rigondeaux, which no one wants to fight him. The powers to be got together and pretty much had a deal sorted out where Guillermo will be demoted just so this fight can be a unification. The winner of the fight must fight Guillermo, but going by the track record, how much this man has been mismanaged and screwed over, that's not going to happen. So the unification is made, massive historic show up for this fight. Frampton wins by a split decision. With Guillermo out of the picture entirely, this set up a fight with Leo Santa Cruz for the WBA title. Leo, who had bottlenecked his career becoming one of the premier faces of the sport due to vanilla matchmaking, the fight that would have elevated him happening 2 to 3 years too late, finally stepped up, but also somehow managed to be an A-side and have Frampton, the unified champion, travel to the States to fight him. Frampton would defeat Cruz by majority decision to become a 2-division champion and earn him Fighter of the Year, and the first since Willie Pep in 1945 at featherweight. The only competition from that year would have to be Terence Crawford, who had unified against Victor Postal for the WBO, WBC, and ring titles. Crawford becoming a 2-time ring champion in 2 different weight classes, and lastly Roman Gonzalez, who had beat undefeated WBC super flyweight champion Carlos Cuadras to become champion in 4 different weight classes to go 46-0. To end off 2016, Vasyl would beat former undefeated champ Nicholas Walters. To start off 2017, he will completely outclass and stop WBA regular champ Jason Sosa, a guy who gave Walters a lot of trouble, fighting him to a draw. Vasyl will put up another highlight reel performance, defeating Miguel Marriaga in the 7th round. He will then face the most feared man at below super feather, Guillermo Rigondeaux. Rigo, who is usually known for confusing and outclassing his opponents, was now the victim where Vasyl had confused and outclassed him. The fight will come to a sudden halt. Guillermo retired from his corner in between rounds 6 and 7. This would earn Vasyl the nickname Lomachenko and earn him the Fighter of the Year of 2017. Some notable fighters in competition: Anthony Joshua, after his huge win against Vladimir Klitschko; Ryoichi Taguchi, who unified and became the IBF, WBA, and Ring Magazine Light Flyweight champ; and lastly, Terrence Crawford, who became the first male fighter since O'Neal Bell in 2006 to become the undisputed champion in boxing. He became the first male boxer in the 4-belt era, after the era coming to an official start in 2007, and the second boxer altogether to become 4-belt undisputed, as Cecilia Brækhus will become the first in September 2014. And Sergey Kovalev, he will beat the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, the 46-0 Roman Gonzalez, not once, but twice in a row, after being shelved and awaiting almost 2 years as a mandatory to receive a shot to regain the title. Usyk will clean out cruiserweight in the tournament and become the first undisputed cruiserweight champion since O'Neal Bell in 2006. To earn the Fighter of the Year nomination. Notable mentions: Anthony Joshua, Vasyl Lomachenko, who had become the fastest 3-division champion in 12 fights, defeating WBA ring and lineal champion Jorge Linares in his first fight at lightweight. Hiroto Kyoguchi, the IBF strawweight champion, will move up in his first fight at lightfly and defeat the WBA and ring champion Hecky Butler by a 10th round TKO. And lastly, Callum Smith, who had won the super middleweight tournament, becoming the ring and WBA champion. Coming hot off his big win against Golovkin in 2018 for the WBA, WBC, IBO, ring, and lineal titles, Canelo in 2019 will unify for the IBF title against Daniel Jacobs. Jacobs gave Golovkin all he could handle, shocking many and losing by a narrow unanimous decision. Canelo as well would defeat Jacobs by a close unanimous decision. After failure to secure a September date for a possible undisputed unification, they will salvage a later fight date before it's too late and got Canelo against newly crowned WBO light heavyweight champion Sergey Kovalev. After a highly contested first and second half, in the final quarter of the fight, Kovalev's defense gave out due to fatigue, and Canelo was able to get him out of there in the 11th round to become a 4-time champion. If Ruiz beat Joshua in the rematch in December, he would have been a serious contender for Fighter of the Year. If he didn't fight Joshua till 2019, they may have given him that title just off of that. Naoya Inoue will become the IBF, WBA, and lineal bantamweight champion after defeating Nonito Donaire in the bantamweight tournament. IBF champ Arthur Betabayev will unify against WBC and lineal champion Oleksandr, stopping him in the 10th round. So overall, the 2019 year was pretty competitive. Due to the pandemic, there was not much to choose from. Tyson Fury will have his big win against Wilder in the rematch before boxing closed down. Due to Joshua's loss to Ruiz in 2019, that put Wilder at #1 in the rankings by default and Fury at #2. Joshua's win in the rematch put him at #3, so since these events occurred, the Fury-Wilder rematch was fought for the WBC ring and lineal titles. From where Fury started to even ready to fight for the heavyweight title and defend his lineal title already put him in there as the potential wide winner by default. Fury will share his Fight of the Year status with Teofimo Lopez, who is a 5-1 underdog against Vasyl Lomachenko in the unification. He defeated Vasyl by unanimous decision to become the unified champion, and if you want to count it, because the WBC and their silly franchise title and their rules, Teofimo was unofficially the undisputed champion. The only other fighters to note in this year was Jermell Charlo, who became the WBC, WBA, and IBF champion, defeating Jason Rosario, and Canelo Alvarez, who had successfully started his campaign at super middleweight for undisputed, defeating ring and WBA champion Callum Smith. Canelo obtained the vacant WBC title in this fight as well because David Benavidez was stripped earlier that year. But to be clear here, this title should have gone to Callum Smith a long time ago, as he was the #1 ranked fighter in the WBC ranks. He held the silver title, the WBC title was vacant, and instead of Smith fighting for the vacant WBC title in the super middleweight tournament, they let their #1 contender fight for a useless diamond belt. They skipped over number 2, number 3, number 4, number 6, number 7, number 8, and had number 5 ranked David Benavidez and number 9 ranked Ruben Gavril fight for the vacant title. Canelo to start off the 2021 year. He would unify against WBO champion Billy Joe Saunders. He would stop Saunders in the 8th round, then to complete his campaign for undisputed, defeat IBF champion Caleb Plant to become the first undisputed super middleweight champion on paper, because many believe that unofficially Joe Calzaghe should have been the undisputed champion after his fight against Mikkel Kessler in 2007.
Now the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world!
Runner-ups that year, you had Oleksandr Usyk, who had became undisputed at cruiserweight, slowly became a full-fledged heavyweight, and defeated WBO, WBA, IBF, and IBO champion Anthony Joshua. For Tyson Fury, he defeated Wilder. However, if Wilder did not butt in the process of making the Fury-Joshua fight from being made and stepping aside, then the winner of that fight, most certainly due to pandemic restrictions affecting world boxing, would have shared the fight of the year with Canelo. Dmitry Bivol, who is one of the most talented fighters in boxing, would finally get his day, defeating the #1 pound-for-pound star Canelo Alvarez by unanimous decision, Canelo's first loss since the Mayweather fight. The runner-ups for that year is Jermell Charlo, who became undisputed, stopping Brian Castano in the 10th round. Naoya Inoue, who was finally able to fight in Japan because boxing was suspended from happening till the final months of 2021, was able to continue his 2019 campaign, beat Donaire for the WBC title, then in December to become Japan's first undisputed champ in over 40 plus years against Paul Butler. Important note, Japanese fighters were barred from fighting for the IBF and WBO titles. They were not even allowed to unify. So the minute that 3-belt era started, there would never be an undisputed champion from Japan. Fighters in Japan became allowed to fight in 2013 when the JBC recognized the IBF and WBO as a legitimate organization. Since the pandemic is over, this year was a very hard choice between Naoya Inoue and Terence Crawford. If it was like 2020, these two would definitely share the title. Inoue in his first fight at super bantamweight would defeat the highly regarded unified champion Stephen Fulton, knocking him out in the 8th round to become Japan's second 4-division champion. Marlon Tapales would upset the undefeated unified champion Akhmed Dalaev by split decision. Inoue will make history and become Japan's first 2-division undisputed champion, getting the KO in the 10th round. Since this fight was less than 1 year from the time Inoue became undisputed at bantamweight, he became 2-division undisputed in less than 1 year by 13 days. Terence Crawford earlier that year will become 2-time undisputed and ring champion in 3 different weight classes when he had defeated Errol Spence Jr., stopping him in the 9th round. In the final quarter of the 2024 year, who do you have as fight of the year and why? Leave in the comments. And on top of that, this is every single fighter of the year from the year 2000 to present day. For more videos like these, be sure to like, share, and if you're new, subscribe to Patreon for Patreon-backed projects and early access. This project being on the tale of Floyd Mayweather versus Ricky Hatton. I'm Vasyl Lomachenko, and I'm out.